I cleaned the infirmary at first light and discovered that the doctor's private book contained two different sets of instructions. One he spoke aloud with confidence, and one he wrote in the margins with doubt. I was meant to scrub floors and carry water, nothing more. But I began to notice which treatments he ordered publicly were the exact ones he questioned privately, which bottles were counted twice, while others disappeared unrecorded, which patients worsened after following his spoken commands, and improved only after he quietly revised them to match what his margins always said. The white man never imagined that the enslaved hands cleaning his desk could read the language of contradiction, could see that the stains on the shelves marked repeated failures, that his grip tightened on the bedframe when attendants asked questions, that his voice grew louder in defense precisely when his certainty cracked underneath. So I did something dangerous. I followed his orders exactly as he spoke them, not as he wrote them, and I let the outcome speak the truth he could not admit. Patient after patient! The pattern became undeniable aggressive bloodletting that weakened instead of healed, purgatives that worsened fevers, bed rest that caused complications, his own margins warned against. This testimony belongs to the chronicles of Kofi, a record of truths that were never meant to survive, preserved by those who were never meant to understand. If you would stand as witness to what happens when knowledge lives in margins and memory instead of official record, mark this testimony so it endures. Signal that you have heard, and speak your judgment below, because here is what I need you to know. Knowledge did not free me. I am still enslaved, but it loosened the grip of certainty that held us all. And sometimes in a world built on the confidence of those who hold power, simply introducing doubt is where change begins. So I ask you now, when the ones with all the authority are writing one truth in public while doubting it in private, who decides which version gets remembered? The infirmary smells like carbolic acid and old blood when I arrive at first light. The odor settles in my throat, sharp, chemical. Underneath it, something organic decays, bandages that need burning, bowls that need scrubbing. The residue of bodies fighting to stay alive. I carry my bucket and rags through the door. The floorboards creak under my weight. Morning light has not reached the windows yet. The room exists in that gray space between night and day. I keep my eyes on the floor. I am here to clean, nothing more. The white man thinks cleaning is beneath notice. He believes the hands that scrub are too simple to observe, too occupied with menial labor to perceive the patterns around them. In my land, this meant the lowest work often saw the highest truths. The women who swept the chief's compound knew which visitors came in secret. The men who carried water heard which elders argued. The servants who prepared meals learned which families prospered and which pretended. Invisibility was not weakness. It was position. I cleaned the shelves first, glass bottles lined in careful rows, each one labeled in script I cannot fully read, but I know shapes. I know letters enough to recognize names, repeated morphine. Laudanum, calomel, quinine. I observe which bottles are counted twice and which are never locked. The morphine is counted every morning and every night. The doctor's hand writes the number in a ledger kept locked in the top drawer. His fingers move across the page with the certainty of ritual. He checks. He records. He locks it away again. But the laudanum sits unmarked. 3 bottles on the second shelf. Their levels drop and rise without documentation. The tinctures of mercury go unrecorded. The powders in paper packets are never tallied. No memory comes yet. Only the sense that order here is performed, not practiced. Order that exists for observation, for the appearance of control. But beneath the performance, something more chaotic moves. The doctor keeps a private book on his desk. I notice it the first week, leather-bound, darker than the ledgers, pages yellowed at the edges, where fingers have turned them repeatedly. He touches it often. His hand drifts to it between patients. During quiet moments, when he thinks no one is watching, but he never opens it when others are present, never consults it in company. I note where he keeps it. Left drawer, second from the top. The key stays on a chain at his waist. The chain is silver, It catches light when he moves. I continue my chores, as if blind, as if my hands know only the work, not the world around them, as if my eyes see only dirt and disorder, nothing deeper. My hand finds the bronze weight in my pocket. It is still there, warm against my palm through the fabric, smooth from years of handling. It is a small piece of home, a fragment of the world I came from. My mother pressed it into my hand the day I was taken. She said nothing. There was nothing to say, but the weight has stayed with me. Through the ship, through the auction, through every place I have been sold and resold. It reminds me I am more than what they see, more than the body that cleans and carries, more than the silence they mistake for emptiness. I do not forget. I never forget. The doctor arrives an hour after dawn. I hear his footsteps in the hall before I see him. Confident, measured, the walk of a man who owns his space. He is tall, taller than me by half a head, clean-shaven. His coat is pressed, and his collar is starched white. His hands are pale, soft, the hands of a man who has never worked soil or carried stone. He nods at me without seeing me. The gesture is automatic, acknowledging my presence the way one might acknowledge furniture. I am the bucket and the rag given form, useful, necessary, unworthy of actual attention. In my land, this meant I could move through his world like wind through grass. I stand close during examinations, close enough to hand him instruments before he asks, close enough to hear what he says and what he does not say. I hold basins while he works. I fetch water. I steady patients when they need support. I have learned to anticipate his needs, to move before being told. The white man calls this being well-trained. I call it survival. I observe certainty spoken aloud while hesitation stays on the page. A patient lies on the examination table, middle-aged, pale, complaining of persistent cough and night sweats. The doctor examines him, listens to his chest, checks his tongue, feels his pulse. Then he speaks. His voice is confident, steady. He tells the patient the treatment will help, that the cough will ease within days, that rest and medicine will restore health. But I watch his hand hesitate over the bottles, watch his eyes flick to the private book lying closed on the desk. His fingers hover between two remedies. He chooses one. But the hesitation was there, brief, real. The contrast triggers a faint memory of traders in my village who praised the weight of grain they did not trust. They would pour millet from sacks into buyers' bowls. They would speak loudly of quality, of abundance, of fair measure, but their fingers would test the grain as they poured, feeling for stones mixed in to add false weight, checking for moisture that would cause rot. They praised with their mouths what they doubted with their hands. I begin to listen for what is not said, for the space between the spoken word and the written instruction, for the distance between public confidence and private uncertainty. I keep my eyes low. I do not meet his gaze. I do not ask questions. The white man thinks silence means agreement, means understanding, means acceptance of his authority. In my land, this meant silence was the sharpest tool for learning. Children who spoke too much were sent away from important conversations. Students who questioned too often were denied access to knowledge. But those who listened, who watched, who absorbed without challenging, they learned everything. I shelved the remedies in the afternoon. The doctor has gone to take his meal. He leaves at the same time every day. Returns an hour later, smelling of tobacco and coffee. The infirmary is empty, except for two patients sleeping in the far beds. Their breathing is ragged, wet, the sound of lungs struggling. I work quietly, returning bottles to their places, wiping dust from shelves, straightening labels to face forward. I observe stains, marking repeated failures. A brown ring on the third shelf where a bottle of iron tonic once sat. The stain is old, set deep into the wood. It speaks of liquid left too long, of a bottle that leaked or was abandoned. But the same iron tonic appears in the locked ledger as currently in use. I have seen the doctor write the name, have seen him mark doses distributed. The bottle that left that stain is long gone. Yet the records say otherwise. The site recalls elders' warning that repeated trials reveal doubt. A healer who keeps trying the same remedy in different forms does not trust the remedy. He trusts only that he must be seen doing something. In my village there was a man who treated fevers with increasingly elaborate rituals. First herbs, then chanting, then sacrifices, each method more complex than the last. The elders watched him. They said nothing publicly, but privately they noted, a healer who keeps changing his approach does not believe in any of them. He is simply avoiding the admission that he does not know. I memorize the patterns without touching the private book. The room teaches me its language. Bottles move from shelf to shelf, not randomly, with purpose, testing different combinations, different approaches, doses that change weekly, instructions revised, treatments abandoned and resumed. The private book holds the record of all this uncertainty. I am certain of it now. The white man thinks his knowledge is his alone, written in words I cannot read, secured in books I cannot touch, protected by locks and chains and the assumption of my ignorance. In my land, this meant knowledge lived in observation, not possession. The women who could not read knew which plants healed by watching what animals ate. The men who could not write knew when rains would come by reading the sky. Knowledge was not trapped in symbols on a page. It moved through attention, through memory, through the patient accumulation of what was seen and tested and proven true. I do not need to read every word in his book. I can read the room, the patterns, the outcomes. I can read him. The doctor lectures the attendants during morning rounds. There are 3 of them, 2 women, 1 man. All white, all educated enough to assist, but not enough to challenge. He speaks of causes and cures. His voice carries the polish of education. Of universities I will never see, of texts I will never read, of a world that exists entirely beyond my reach. He uses words I do not know, Latin terms, medical language. He gestures with confidence, draws conclusions with certainty. But I observe how his hand tightens on the bedframe when the male attendant asks a question. The question is simple, respectful, about why one treatment is preferred over another. The doctor answers smoothly, cites authority, references studies. His voice remains steady, but his knuckles whiten where he grips the iron frame. The gesture triggers a memory of a chief in my village, whose authority was exposed by a single doubt. He had declared the rains would come early that year, had staked his reputation on it, had ordered planting to begin ahead of schedule. When a young man asked how he knew, not challenging, simply asking, the chief's hand had gripped his staff until the knuckles turned pale. He answered with anger disguised as wisdom, spoke of signs the young man was too inexperienced to read, of knowledge passed down through generations. But everyone saw the grip, saw the whitened knuckles, saw the tell. The rains came late that year. Many seeds were lost. The chief's power diminished, not because he was wrong, but because the doubt had been spoken aloud and his body had confirmed it. I file the doctor's reaction away, store it with the other observations. The bottles counted twice, the stains that mark failures, the hesitation before certainty. The pattern is forming, slowly, carefully, like a picture emerging from morning fog. An attendant pulls me aside between shifts. She is older than me, perhaps 40. Her face is lined from years of work. Her hands are roughened from lye soap and hot water. Her name is Margaret. She has been here longer than the doctor, longer than anyone. She whispers which treatments worsen the sick. Her voice is low, careful. She glances toward the door as she speaks. The mercury rubs that inflame the skin they are meant to heal. The purgatives that weaken instead of cleanse. The bloodletting that leaves patients pale and trembling for days. She tells me these things because she has watched me watching, because she knows I am gathering what she cannot speak openly. I observe fear masked as obedience in her eyes. She cannot question him directly, cannot refuse his orders, cannot challenge his authority without losing her position, but she can share what she has seen, can build a record through me. The whisper he calls chosen kinship formed under risk. In my village, women who prepared the dead would share knowledge the living refused to hear. They would speak of which families carried certain sicknesses, which bloodlines held weakness, which marriages produced children who did not thrive. They spoke in kitchens and by rivers, in places where men did not listen, where authority did not reach. Their knowledge was dismissed as gossip, as women's talk. Unimportant, but families who listened to them made better marriages, raised healthier children, avoided dangers the proud ignored. Margareton, I agree to share patterns, not complaints. To count outcomes, not assign blame. We will not accuse, we will not challenge. We will simply remember. Record? Bear witness? The white man thinks we are too ignorant to notice patterns, too simple to connect cause and effect, too limited to understand what we see. In my land, this meant we were underestimated in ways that gave us power. I carry water past the doctor's desk the next morning. The bucket is heavy, full, nearly to the rim. I move slowly, carefully. Water sloshes against the sides, but does not spill. I observe the private book, left open on the desk. He has been called to examine a patient in the far corner. An emergency, a woman seizing, her body rigid, her eyes rolled back. He moved quickly, forgot to close the book, forgot to lock it away. I set the bucket down, position myself so my body blocks the view from the beds. The book lies open to a page of printed text, formal medical language, the kind found in textbooks and journals, but the margins are written in hand. Small script, rushed, cramped between the printed lines. Question marks appear next to recommended doses. Too high, written beside one, reduced by half beside another. Crossed out instructions, entire paragraphs marked through with heavy lines. Notches that read tried failed and reconsider approach, and perhaps lower dosage, and conflicting results. No memory comes now, only opportunity measured in seconds. I cannot read every word. My reading is limited, pieced together from scraps of learning, from signs and labels and repeated exposure, but I can read enough. I can read doubt, written in the margins of certainty. The titles I recognize on the use of calomel in febrile conditions, fever management protocols, concerning hysteria in women and its treatment, formal, authoritative, the voice of medical science. But surrounding each title, surrounding each confident proclamation, the margins speak a different language. Uncertainty, trial, error, revision. I step away before he returns. My face shows nothing. My hands do not tremble. I pick up the bucket and continue toward the patients. But something has shifted inside me. Some understanding has taken root and begun to grow. The white man speaks with the voice of printed certainty, but he doubts what he speaks. He questions what he cannot admit, questioning publicly. In my land, this meant the gap between what was said and what was known was where truth lived. A patient worsens after the prescribed dose. A young woman, maybe 20, brought in with fever 3 days ago. The doctor had examined her, given her quinine, instructed bed rest, and limited water to avoid weakening the treatment's effect. Now she is worse, delirious. Her skin burns when I touch her forehead with a damp cloth. Her breathing is shallow. Rapid eye observe the doctor blame fate, not method. He stands beside her bed, speaks to her husband, a young man, anxious, wringing his cap between his hands. The doctor's voice is sympathetic. Grave? He tells the husband the fever is stronger than expected, that some illnesses resist even the best treatment. That medicine can only do so much against God's will. The language is careful, designed to deflect, to transfer responsibility from the treatment to providence. The blame triggers a memory of elders saying, language shields failure. When hunts went badly in my village, the hunters would return and speak of spirits who favored the animal, of ancestors who tested their worthiness, of signs they should have read differently. Never that they tracked poorly, never that they moved too loudly or positioned themselves wrong. When crops failed, it was the ancestors, the spirits, the land itself being moody. Never the seeds planted too shallow, never the fields left untended too long. Language allowed failure to exist without accountability. I remain silent. I hold the basin while he examines the woman again. I fetched fresh water when he asks. I adjust her pillow when he instructs. But I am watching, always watching. I see him glance at the private book on his desk. See him calculate something behind his eyes. See him choose to continue the current treatment rather than revise it. That night, I sit in the small room where I sleep, a space barely wider than my shoulders. A cot with a thin mattress, a nail on the wall for my coat, a crate that serves as a table. Nothing else. I pause before continuing this memory, before carrying it forward into what comes next. I acknowledge the danger of knowing too much. Knowledge without power is a burden. It sits heavy in the chest. It makes sleep difficult. It turns every interaction into a calculation of risk. The white man thinks ignorance protects us, that not knowing keeps us safe, that the less we understand, the less dangerous we become. In my land, this meant knowledge was the only protection that lasted. Ignorance could be used against you, could be shaped into whatever story served those in power. But knowledge, even knowledge you could not speak, gave you solid ground to stand on. I touched the bronze weight in my pocket. Feel its familiar shape, its comforting presence. It grounds me, reminds me why I am here, why I survived. Morning becomes the transition. I rise before the sun touches the windows. I dress in darkness. I return to the infirmary. The pattern repeats, day after day. Observation layered upon observation, until the crisis comes. A fever sweeps through the city in late summer. It arrives on ships from the south, moves through the porters' quarters first, then spreads. The infirmary fills beyond its capacity. Beds are occupied. Pallets line the floors between them. The hallway holds those waiting for space inside. The air grows thick with sickness and fear, and the smell of bodies failing. I work without stopping, carrying water, changing linens, holding patients when they convulse, cleaning what they expel. I observe the doctor consult a private book more than his spoken orders. He stands at his desk during brief moments of pause, the book open before him, his finger tracing the margins, his lips moving as he reads words he has written to himself. Then he closes the book, straightens his shoulders, walks to the beds, and speaks with confidence about treatment. But the confidence is a performance. I can see it now clearly, can recognize the difference between certainty and the appearance of certainty. The scene triggers a clear memory of a healer in my village, teaching that belief completes a cure. Her name was Amma. She was old when I was young. Her hands were gnarled, but steady. She would give bitter tea made from bark for stomach pain. She would chant over broken bones while setting them. She would lay hands on fevered skin and speak words of healing. And she would tell the patient they were already getting better, that the medicine was working, that recovery was certain and near. Sometimes they believed, sometimes they healed. But she told me once, in private, when I brought her water, that belief only worked when the medicine had truth behind it. You can speak confidence over a treatment that works, she said, and the confidence will help. But false confidence, she said, kills faster than honest doubt, because the patient stops fighting, stops listening to their own body, trusts the healer's words instead of their own pain. And when the treatment fails, they die still, believing in the lie. The memory steadies me, focuses what I have been observing into clear understanding. The doctor is speaking confidence over treatments he doubts, is performing certainty while practicing uncertainty, and people are dying because of it. I begin to note contradictions between the book's margins and the spoken instructions. A man with fever is brought in. The doctor orders high doses of calomel to purge the fever from his system. But I have seen the margin beside that very treatment. It reads reduce by half toxicity observed in repeated cases. A woman weak from illness is ordered to complete bed rest. No movement, no walking, total stillness to preserve strength. But the private note says early movement prevents complications and weakening observed. The doctor prescribes extended bloodletting for a patient with infection. But the margin questions whether weakening the body helps or hinders recovery. He speaks with a voice of medical texts printed in distant cities, but he doubts those texts enough to question them in private. I observe doubt written small and certainty spoken large. The mismatch recalls lessons about leverage hidden in language. In my village, disputes were settled by speaking before the elders. The one who spoke with the most confidence, with the clearest voice, with the most references to tradition and authority, that one often won. But the elders were not fooled by volume. They watched for the tells. The tightened jaw, the averted eyes, the hand that gripped the speaking staff too hard. Words could lie. Bodies rarely did. I began to time my questions carefully. Not accusations. Not challenges. Simple requests for clarification using his own terms. A patient needs treatment. I ask, "Doctor, should I prepare the high dose or the reduced dose you mentioned yesterday?" He stops, looks at me. His eyes narrow slightly. "I said the standard dose," he replies. "Yes, doctor, I will prepare it now." I observe irritation surface before control returns. Another day. Another patient. I ask, "Doctor, you said bed rest, but should I help them walk as we discussed last week?" His mouth tightens. He breathes once through his nose. "They need rest. Complete rest." "Yes, doctor." No memory comes now. Only pressure applied lightly. Precisely. I am not accusing him of anything. I am simply repeating his own words back to him, forcing him to hear the contradiction spoken aloud. I retreat before suspicion settles too firmly. I return to my work. I ask no more questions that day. But the seed is planted. He knows now that I am listening, that I am remembering, that I notice when instructions change. Margaret reports another failure that evening. A patient given the full dose of calomel as ordered, not the reduced dose written in the margin. Now he is suffering severe cramping, bloody stool, weakness beyond what the fever caused, the exact symptoms that private margin warned against. I observe patterns harden into something undeniable. Not just one patient, not just one treatment, a pattern of outcomes that align with the margins and contradict the orders. The report triggers a memory of my father tallying harvests. He kept count of what actually grew in our family's fields. Not what the chief predicted. Not what the priests promised after rituals. Not what traditions said should happen. What actually grew. Over years, he learned which practices worked and which were repeated out of tradition alone. He never spoke against tradition publicly. That would have been dangerous, disrespectful. But in our family's plot, he planted by outcome, and our harvests were consistently better than our neighbors. Margaret and I agree to let outcomes speak. We will not argue. We will not accuse directly. We will simply count, record, remember, and we will follow his spoken orders. Exactly, precisely, publicly. And when the outcomes contradict those orders, the contradiction will speak for itself. The white man thinks we lack the capacity for such work, that only the educated can discern patterns, that intelligence lives exclusively in formal learning. In my land, this meant survival depended on reading signs the powerful ignored. I repeat the doctor's instructions exactly as spoken, not as written in the margins I have glimpsed. A patient needs fever reduction. I have seen the margin. It says cool compresses and reduced blankets. The body needs to release heat, not trap it. But the spoken order says hot tea and extra covering to sweat out the illness. I follow this spoken order. Precisely, publicly, in front of witnesses. I observe the results contradict authority. The fever worsens. The patient weakens. His skin flushes deeper red. His breathing becomes labored. 2 days pass before the doctor quietly revises his instructions. Now he orders cool compresses. Now he removes blankets. Now he follows what the margin always said. The patient begins to improve. The contradiction echoes elders saying truth walks faster when unpushed. You cannot force a man to admit error. Cannot corner him into confession. That only creates defense, resistance, deeper but you can create conditions where error becomes visible to others, where the truth emerges naturally through outcome. And once truth stands in plain sight, denial becomes difficult. I change nothing else. I do not explain. I do not remind him of his earlier orders. I do not point out the contradiction. I simply follow the new instructions as if they were always the plan. My face remains neutral. My voice remains respectful. My hands remain busy. But inside, I am counting, recording, building a case of outcomes that will speak when I cannot. Questions begin to spread among the staff. Not loud questions, not confrontational, but whispered observations between shifts, comparisons made quietly in corners, patients who improved when the margins were followed, patients who suffered when they were not. Margaret talks to the other attendants, carefully, never saying too much, simply asking, "Have you noticed, have you seen?" No names are attached to these observations. No accusations made, but doubt is contagious once it begins to spread. I observe the doctor defend certainty with volume. He speaks more loudly during morning rounds. His voice carries through the infirmary. He cites texts and authorities, references studies conducted in Philadelphia and New York, reminds everyone of his education, his training, his years of experience. The defense recalls chiefs cornered by their own proclamations. When authority feels threatened, it does not become quiet, does not become thoughtful or reflective. It becomes loud. It insists. It demands recognition. I keep my hands busy. I scrub floors until my knees ache. I change linens until my fingers crack from lie. I remain beneath notice while being everywhere. The private book is guarded more closely now. The desk is never left unattended. The doctor carries the book with him when he leaves the infirmary. The chain at his waist grows tighter. The key is checked more frequently. I observe fear, replace pride. No memory comes now, only confirmation of what I already know. The room tightens around all of us. The air grows heavy with unspoken knowledge, with truth that cannot yet be said aloud. Outcomes continue to disagree with spoken orders. Patients improve when treatments quietly change to match the margins. Patients suffer when they do not. I observe confidence then into procedure. The doctor follows protocols. Now, instead of speaking from authority, he checks the book more often. He second-guesses less openly, but more frequently. His answers become longer, more defensive, more detailed than questions require. The memory of Amma, the village healer, withdraws. I do not need it anymore. I've learned what I needed to learn, seen what I needed to see, understood what I needed to understand. Reckoning is near. I can feel it approaching like weather on the horizon, like the pressure before a storm. Margaret pulls me aside one final time. Her face is tight with worry. Her hands shake slightly when she grabs my arm. She tells me the doctor has been asking questions about who has been in his office when he was gone, who has touched his desk, who has been asking about treatments. I observe trust fracture under pressure. The kinship we built is cracking. She is afraid now. Not of him, exactly, but of what knowing has cost us both, of what it might still cost. That is when I know the danger is real, immediate, personal. Knowledge has never freed anyone in a place like this. Knowledge in the wrong hands hour. Hands is evidence of transgression. We have crossed a boundary, not by stealing, not by destroying, but by seeing, by knowing, by understanding what we were meant to remain ignorant of. The white man thinks we stole something by learning, that we violated boundaries meant to keep us separate from understanding. In my land, this meant boundaries were always about power, never about truth. My hand finds the bronze weight in my pocket. It is still there, warm, familiar, real. But for the first time since this began, I wonder if it will be enough. I wonder if remembering will be enough. I wonder if knowing the truth matters when the truth has no power to protect you. The patients keep coming. The fever keeps spreading. The work continues without pause, and I continue cleaning, carrying, observing. But now I am watching not just the treatments. I am watching the doctor watch me, and I realize with sudden clarity that the book spoke its truth through the margins. But I am the one who learned to read them. I am the one who will pay for listening. Toll's instructions exactly as spoken, not as written in the margins. This becomes my method, my protection, my weapon. When he orders treatments, I have seen him doubt in private. I followed those orders precisely. Publicly, in front of the other attendants, in front of Margaret, in front of anyone who might later remember, a patient with infection is brought in. Young man, strong before the sickness took him, now weak. Fevered his wound, weeping pus. The doctor orders aggressive blood, 2 pints, to drain the corruption from his system. But I have seen the margin beside this exact treatment. Weakening, observed reduces body's ability to fight free. Consider volume. I prepare the basin. I tie the tourniquet. I assist as instructed. The patient weakens dramatically. His skin goes gray. His pulse becomes thread. 3 days later, the doctor quietly reduces the bloodletting protocol, revises his approach, begins the treatments the margins always suggested. I observe results, contradict authority without my saying a single word. The contradiction echoes elders saying, truth walks faster when in my village, when someone powerful made a mistake, direct confrontation only hardened their position, made them defensive, made them double down on error to avoid admitting fault. But if you simply let the mistake stand, let the outcome reveal itself, let others see what you saw, truth would walk on its own feet, would spread without being pushed. I changed nothing about my demeanor. My voice remains respectful. My posture remains deferential. My face shows nothing but patient attentiveness. But I am creating a record, an invisible archive of contradictions, of moments when the spoken order and the private doubt diverged. And people are beginning to notice. Questions spread among the staff without names attached. Without direct accusations. Margaret talks to the other attendants during shift changes, in the hallway, by the water pump, in moments when the doctor is occupied elsewhere. She does not say, the doctor is wrong. She does not say, the treatments are failing. She simply asks, have you noticed the patients who improve after instructions change? Have you seen the pattern? The male attendant Thomas begins, keeping his own informal count. Not written. He cannot write well, but he remembers. He tallies in his head. Patients treated according to the margins, mostly improved. Patients treated according to the spoken orders that contradict the margins, mostly worsened or stayed the same. The pattern is becoming visible. Not through accusation, through observation. The white man thinks we are incapable of this kind of analysis, that we lack the mental capacity to track outcomes across time, to correlate treatment with result. In my land, this meant we were consistently underestimated in ways that gave us advantage. I observed the doctor defend certainty with increasing volume. During morning rounds, his voice carries through the entire infirmary. Patients in the far beds can hear him lecturing the attendants. He cites authorities I have never heard of, references studies conducted in hospitals I will never see, reminds everyone loudly, repeatedly of his education at the medical college in Philadelphia. He speaks of years of training, of apprenticeship under renowned physicians, of access to the latest medical literature. The defense recalls chiefs in my village who, when questioned, would recite their lineage, would name their ancestors, would invoke tradition and bloodline and divine appointment. The louder they spoke, the more uncertain they were. Authority that feels secure does not need to announce itself constantly, does not need to remind everyone of its credentials. It simply acts, and the action speaks. But authority that feels threatened becomes loud, becomes insistent, becomes aggressive in its self-proclamation. I keep my hands busy while he lectures. I scrub the floor beneath the examination table. I organize the shelves. I refill water pitchers. I remain beneath notice, a body performing labor. Nothing more. But my ears are open. My mind is recording. My memory is building its archive. I do not forget. I never forget. The private book is guarded more closely now. The doctor never leaves it on the desk anymore. Never allows it to sit open, never lets it out of his sight. When he must step away, he locks it in the drawer, checks the lock, checks it again. The chain at his waist holds the key. I can hear it jingle when he walks. A small sound, constant, a reminder of what he protects. I observe fear replace pride in his movements. The book used to be something he consulted casually, a reference he turned to between patients, a companion to his work. Now it is something he hides, something he guards, something that has become evidence rather than aid. No memory comes, only confirmation that he knows, that he senses something shifting, that he feels the ground becoming uncertain beneath him. The room tightens around all of us. The air grows thick with knowledge that cannot be spoken aloud. We all know the attendants, the patients who have been here long enough to see patterns, even some of the visitors who come to sit with the sick. We all know that what is said publicly and what is practiced privately do not align. But knowing is not the same as speaking. And speaking is dangerous. Outcomes continue to disagree with spoken orders. The pattern becomes impossible to ignore. A woman with childbed fever is given aggressive purgatives as ordered. She weakens, nearly dies. The treatment is quietly changed. Reduced, modified, she begins to recover. A man with pneumonia is kept flat on his back, as instructed. His lungs fill with fluid. He struggles to breathe. The instruction is revised. He is allowed to sit up, to move slightly. His breathing improves. Patient after patient, treatment after treatment. The same pattern. Spoken orders that worsen, quiet revisions that help. Margins that were right all along. I observe confidence thin into procedure. The doctor no longer speaks from authority. He follows steps, checks, references, consults the book more openly now, though he still will not let others see the margins. His answers to questions become longer, more detailed than necessary, more defensive. When Thomas asks a simple question about dosage, the doctor launches into a 10-minute explanation, cites 3 different authorities, references to studies, explains the chemical principles involved. Thomas nods, thanks him, walks away. Later he tells me, he's trying to prove something. Men who are certain don't explain that much. The white man thinks we cannot read these signs, cannot interpret the language of defensive authority. In my land, this meant we learned to read power's weaknesses as carefully as its strengths. Margaret pulls me aside one morning before the doctor arrives. The infirmary is quiet. Gray light filters through the windows. The patients sleep. Her face is tight with worry. Lines have deepened around her mouth. Her hands shake when she grabs my arm. He's been asking about you, she whispers. I wait. I do not ask what he asked. I let her tell me what she needs to say. He wants to know who's been near his desk, who's been in the office when he's not there, who's been asking questions about his treatments. Her eyes search mine. Looking for something? Fear, maybe. Or reassurance. I observe trust fracture under pressure. We built something together. Margaret and I, a quiet alliance, a shared recognition of what was true beneath what was said. But alliances formed in secret crack when pressure is applied. She is afraid now, not just of him, of what knowing has cost us, of what it might still cost. I haven't told him anything, she says quickly, but he's watching. He knows something's wrong. He just doesn't know what yet. I nod. I place my hand over hers where it grips my arm. I have only cleaned, I say quietly. I have only followed his orders, exactly as he gave them. The truth of this settles between us. I have done nothing I can be accused of, have touched nothing I should not touch, have said nothing that challenges his authority openly. I have simply obeyed, precisely, publicly, completely, and somehow that obedience has become more dangerous than rebellion. That is when I know the danger is real, immediate, personal. Knowledge has never freed anyone in a place like this. Knowledge without position, without protection, without the power to speak it safely. Knowledge in hands like men enslaved hands, black hands. Supposedly ignorant hands is not enlightenment. It is evidence of transgression. We have crossed a boundary, not by stealing his book, not by destroying his authority, but by seeing, by knowing, by understanding what we were meant to remain ignorant of. The white man thinks we stole something by learning, that we violated the natural order, that we reached above our station. In my land, This meant boundaries were always about power, never about truth. Knowledge belonged to everyone who could observe, who could remember, who could think. But here, knowledge is property, like land, like tools, like human bodies, and we have trespassed on property that was never meant to be ours. My hand finds the bronze weight in my pocket. It is still there, warm against my palm, smooth and familiar. But for the first time since this began, I wonder if it will be enough, if remembering will be enough, if surviving will be enough. I wonder if knowing the truth matters, when the truth has no power to protect you from those who fear it. The work continues. It must. The fever still spreads through the city. The patients still arrive. The infirmary still fills beyond capacity. I still clean, still carry, still assist. But now I am watching not just the treatments. I am watching the doctor watch me. His eyes follow me more than they used to. Track my movements through the room. Note where I stand, what I touch, who I speak to. He is trying to catch me at something, trying to find evidence of whatever he suspects. But there is nothing to find. I have been careful, precise. I have violated no rule, touched nothing forbidden, except I have learned. And learning, apparently, is the violation. The attendant Thomas warns me during a shift change. His voice is low. We stand by the water pump. The sound of water covers our words. Keep ordinary, he says. Don't stand out. Don't ask questions. Don't give him reason to focus on you. The warning recalls elders saying witnesses must outlast moments. In my village, when powerful men did wrong, the witnesses who survived were not the ones who spoke first, who spoke low, who confronted directly. They were the ones who stayed quiet, who remembered, who waited for the moment when speaking would not cost him everything. I nod once. The gesture is enough. Thomas and I separate. He returns to his duties. I'll return to mine. But the warning settles in my chest like a stone. Stay ordinary. Stay invisible. Stay safe. But I am already none of those things. Not anymore. Treatments quietly change to match the margins without public acknowledgement. The aggressive bloodletting is reduced. The harsh purgatives are softened. The extended bed rest is shortened. One by one, the protocols shift, align themselves with what the private book always said, with what the doctor doubted publicly but believed privately. I observe improvement arrive without acknowledgement. Patients begin to recover more consistently. The death rate drops. The crisis begins to ease. But no one speaks of why. No one mentions the changes. No one acknowledges that the treatments that work are not the ones that were ordered initially. The improvements simply happen, silently, as if by accident or divine intervention. No memory comes now. Only proof, only the evidence of outcomes. Silence holds what speech cannot. The doctor speaks less during rounds. Now, his lectures grow shorter. His confidence the performance of it begins to wane. He watches more than he teaches, observes more than he instructs. I observe pride retreat into caution. He double-checks himself now, pauses before giving orders, consults the private book more openly, though still shielding the margins from view. The shift recalls lessons that power cracks when read aloud by others. In my village, a leader's strength came not from force, but from the agreement of those who followed, from the collective belief that he should lead. When that belief cracked, when people began to question, to doubt, to see weakness, power could not be maintained by volume alone. It required either renewed trust or increased force. And trust, once broken, is almost impossible to restore. I keep reading outcomes, keep counting, keep remembering. The archive in my mind grows larger, more detailed, more precise. I know which treatments failed and which succeeded, which patients worsened under which protocols, which quiet revisions led to which improvements. I know because I was there, because I watched, because I paid attention when others assumed I was incapable of such attention. The white man thinks memory belongs to the literate, to those who can write things down, preserve them in text. In my land, this meant memory belonged to those who carried it, who held it sacred, who refused to forget. I am becoming a book myself, a living record of what happened here, of what was said and what was done and how they did not align. Access to the infirmary tightens without explanation. New rules appear. Only certain people allowed in certain areas. The doctor's office has declared off limits, except during specific hours. I am reassigned, briefly, sent to work in the laundry instead of the infirmary, told my services are needed elsewhere. I observe protection masquerade as discipline. The doctor is creating distance, limiting my access, reducing my opportunity to observe. But the reassignment is temporary. Only 3 days. The fever crisis demands too many hands. I am needed. When I return, the private book is gone from the desk entirely. He carries it with him constantly now, or locks it somewhere I cannot see. The cost of knowing lands near. I feel it. The isolation, the suspicion, the narrowing of space and opportunity. But I accept it. What choice do I have? I return to my work. I clean. I carry. I assist. I keep my eyes down and my mouth closed. I survive. Time passes. Weeks become months. The fever crisis eases. The city begins to breathe again. The infirmary empties slowly. Beds that were full now stand ready. Pallets that lined the floors are rolled and returns to the desk. But its power has diminished. I observe its power diminished by being known. It is no longer secret, no longer sacred. Too many people have glimpsed its contradictions. Too many outcomes have revealed its hidden truths. The margin spoke, not directly, not loudly, but through the bodies of patients, through the tallies of success and failure, through the quiet revisions that saved lives. The book still sits on the desk. The doctor still consults it. But he does so differently now, with less certainty, with more humility, with the knowledge that others are watching, others are counting, others are remembering. The room remembers what was learned here. The walls hold a record even if no official document does. And I remember for it, for the room, for the patients, for the attendants who whispered and counted and bore witness. I do not forget. I never forget. One morning, months after the crisis has passed, I pause while cleaning the infirmary. The light comes through the windows, golden and soft. The room is quiet, peaceful. Only 2 patients remain, both recovering well. I stand with my rag in hand and look at the desk where the private book sits. I paused before ending this account, before closing this memory, before sealing it into the archive I carry. The doctor believed the book made him untouchable. Believed his education, his position, his access to knowledge written in words I supposedly could not read. He never imagined its margins could speak through me. He never imagined that observation could become evidence, that memory could become record, that the enslaved man who cleaned his floors could build a case against his certainty without speaking a single word of accusation. Knowledge did not free me. That is the truth I must acknowledge. I am still enslaved, still onde, still subject to sale and separation and violence. The book's margins did not break my chains, did not grant me liberty, did not change my legal status or my social position, but it loosened something. The hands that held us all. The doctor's more careful now, more humble, more willing to doubt his own certainty. The attendants trust their observations more. Speak up, Maury. Question, Maury. The treatments have improved. The death rate has dropped. Lives have been saved. Not through my freedom. Through the loosening of grip. Through the introduction of doubt into a system that claims certainty. The white man thinks power is about control, about certainty, about never admitting doubt or error. In my land, this meant true strength came from flexibility, from willingness to learn, from humility before what you do not know. The healer Amma once told me, the worst healers are the ones who never admit they might be wrong, because they stop learning, stop observing, stop growing. And when they stop growing, people die. My hand finds the bronze weight in my pocket one final time. It is still there, still warm, still still mine. It reminds me that I carry more than this body through the world. I carry memory, knowledge, observation, truth. I carry the record of what happened here, in this infirmary, in this city, in this moment, when the margins spoke, and I learned to read them. The doctor will write his own account someday. Perhaps will publish his findings. Will claim credit for discoveries that came from doubt written small in margins he thought no one else could read. The white man always writes the official history, always claims the knowledge, always takes credit for truths that were learned collectively. In my land, this meant that true history lived elsewhere, in memory, in story, in the accounts passed down through those who witnessed but could not write. I am that witness now. I am that memory. I am that account. And I will carry this truth with me wherever I go. Whoever owns me next, whatever work I am forced to perform, I will remember the book that spoke through me, the margins that revealed doubt, the outcomes that proved the power of observation. I will remember that knowledge is not owned by those who write it down. It belongs to those who perceive it, who remember it, who refuse to forget. The bronze weight sits warm in my pocket, my mother's last gift. The piece of home I carry always. I touch it and remember her words, spoken so long ago I can barely recall her face. You are more than what they see. You are more than what they think. I am Kofi. I am a witness. I am a record, and I do not forget. I never forget. The infirmary waits. The work waits. The day continues, and I walk toward it, not free, not powerful, not protected by any law or institution, but carrying something they cannot take from me, something they do not even know I have. The truth, complete, remembered, accurate. The book spoke, but I was the one who learned to listen, and that listening quiet, careful, invisible to those who never thought to guard against it. That listening changed something. Not everything, not enough, but something. And sometimes, in a world built on the certainty of those who hold power, introducing doubt is the first step toward change, the margins whispered. I heard, I remembered, and now you know.